You're listening to English with Monty. Today is 8 Minute English, talking about using the present simple or the present continuous. Hello there and welcome to 8 Minute English. I've got Gideon on the show and we're going to do an interesting topic today, present continuous versus present simple. Hi Gideon, how are you doing?
Oh, hi, John. I'm doing fine.
Ooh, good start.
Yeah, I use the present continuous there.
You did. I wanted to talk about this because I think, regardless of people's levels, I would say certain speakers would potentially get this consistently wrong, even if their level is good, right? It's a high level. Am I fair in saying that?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. I mean, there are rules and rules are rules, but sometimes it's a bit tricky. And I commonly hear mistakes on this.
I don't know what your experience is, but I often find Slavic speakers will use the present continuous instead of the present simple. Got to do a bit of a shout out to my lovely friend Julia, who I've recently met in Folkestone, and her English is very good. She will often use the present continuous instead of the present simple. I've experienced this before, maybe with Polish speakers, Russian speakers, Czech speakers, and the like. Is that fair to say? Is that your experience too, that quite often happens?
I think that's fair enough. I think so.
Maybe it's a good idea to start off with when we use the present simple in what situations. I suppose if you look at it in terms of grammar terms, everybody would think, okay, this is simple. It's one of the basic things, but really it is frequently mistaken, isn't it? I guess there's maybe 4 different ways we use the present simple. That's right, isn't it?
It is a little bit complicated. Who wants to start? Yeah,
Well, I don't mind. I can start. The first way of using it is in state, isn't it? When we talk about state, it's something that exists, isn't it? Usually about yourself, I guess, in the sense that I live in Folkestone, I am English, I am 24 years old, things like that.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to live. There is an exception to live, though. I'm currently living in Folkestone.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? With live and maybe work. I mean, I suppose that denotes something being temporary, doesn't it? If you say, I'm currently living in a place.
Yeah, it's all to do with stative verbs and active verbs, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Maybe we'll come on to that afterwards, because in order to get this really correct, you need to know the difference between those two sort of factual things. And also any things that repeat, you would use the present simple. I drink coffee every day, okay? But a common mistake I hear from my students, I'm currently working in France, is I am drinking coffee every day. Because they think, I'm drinking coffee now. They get that correct. I'm drinking every day. But no, because it's a habit, repeated action, then it becomes a present simple, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? And I think that probably brings us on to the second idea, doesn't it, really, in the sense that you've got a time expression. So you used a time expression every day. So every day would come at the beginning or the end when it's talking about habit.
Exactly, yeah. She eats chicken twice a week.
Yes.
So anything like that. Things that repeat.
I suppose the other way of creating a repetition is through adverbs of frequency. So that means when we're using never, rarely, or you could say hardly ever as well, which is probably a bit more frequent. So sometimes, usually, often, and always.
Well, not always, always.
Okay.
You're always doing this. You're always leaving the bathroom in a mess. So that would be in the continuous form. We'll go into that another time. I think that might require a whole episode, John.
Yes.
But be careful of always, but otherwise, yeah. I often read a book in the park.
You wouldn't say often I read a book in the park, really, would you? You tend to use it in that position.
Yeah.
I guess usually and sometimes can change their positions because they're not so strong, as in you could put them at the beginning. Sometimes I eat tomatoes for breakfast. I sometimes eat tomatoes for breakfast. I eat tomatoes for breakfast sometimes.
There is a flexibility.
So you
use this before the verb. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes eat is more common, but sometimes, comma, I eat tomatoes in the park while reading a book.
And that's denoting a bit more emphasis on the actual adverb, isn't it? And then, or if it's at the end, it's an afterthought, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we just have to be a bit careful about those positions. Obviously, to be is an exception in the sense that it goes after the subject and the verb.
No, that's true.
I am sometimes late.
Sometimes I'm late. You could put it before the pronoun. It's not as strict.
Exactly. But that's again with the sometimes and usually idea, isn't it? Wouldn't say never I am late. You have to say, I am never late. I guess there's maybe one or two other ways with present simple that we use. I guess factual information. For example, water boils at 100 degrees at sea level. The sky is blue.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
That is a factual thing, isn't it? The sky is blue. This is made of wood. I suppose the fourth way is talking about timetables. My train leaves at 6.
You use a present continuous when you're talking about fixed appointments, don't you?
Yes.
Present continuous, it's called the present continuous for the future. It has a name, and you give a present continuous followed by a time phrase, or the time phrase can be implied. For example, I'm seeing Midsummer Night's Dream tonight. That means you have already bought the ticket. I'm flying to Botswana in July. It means you already got the ticket. Yeah, you could say, I'm going to fly to Botswana, maybe, but that implies it's an intention. But here it means you already got the ticket. It's more certain.
Present continuous as a future idea, isn't it? Fixed arrangement, which is often not used consistently, is it? Often people use will instead. Of course, it doesn't matter in terms of understanding.
Yeah, I'd say it's a common mistake. I will go to Germany tomorrow. Native speaker wouldn't really say that. I'm going to Germany tomorrow. I'm flying to Germany tomorrow.
That's true, isn't it?
So you say, I will go to Germany tomorrow, means it's a new idea in your head. I know, I've got a fantastic idea. I'll go to Germany tomorrow.
Absolutely. We spoke about temporary habits with present continuous or temporary situations. You're drinking too much coffee at the moment. Or we mentioned it before, but I'm currently living somewhere. It's more permanent for me living in Folkestone. But yeah, maybe you say I'm currently living in this flat near the park.
It depends if you consider it a state or something which is transitional. So the verb live and work, they're a bit difficult because you might hear both. I've lived here all my life, you'd say. Once I've been living here all my life, it seems a bit strange. But you could say I've been living in Folkestone for 6 months. Maybe that's going to change. It's not a long period of time.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, it's something that's happening now. We are doing a podcast, so it's in this moment. That's probably the common use of it, isn't it? The action at this moment.
Exactly. I mentioned stative verbs. Yes, so some verbs represent a state, like see and hear. I see you, I hear something. So those state verbs you can't use. Well, you can, maybe you can, but that'll change the meaning. But usually you'd use them in the present simple or present continuous. Things with the senses, usually. I smell something strange in the kitchen.
Exactly. This is something we've actually spoken about before, isn't it? I'll refer everybody to the stated verbs episode as well.
Oh, yes. Do check out the stated verb episode.
We'll give you an insight into that. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me, Gideon.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to 8 Minute English.